Hello everybody, and welcome to the first lecture video in this Introduction to Music Production for Game Developers course. My name is StraightUpGruntled, and I'm a game developer and music composer who's been making games and writing music for the last 3 years. I have experience with orchestral, electronic, and chiptune style music. And in this course, I will be teaching you the basics of music theory and the fundamentals of music production through those styles and genres. However, the goal of this course is to teach you the building blocks and the fundamentals that you need to know in order to attempt writing any style or genre of music for your games. In today's video, we will be covering all of the free tools that I have used for music production, including sample libraries, virtual and acoustic instruments, and digital audio workstations. And don't worry if none of that made sense to you. In today's video, we will also be covering the basic terminology of music production specific to game development. Let's get started! Hello, and welcome to the first lesson lecture of this course. In today's lecture, we will be covering all of the tools that you need to know in order to get started with music production. Before we get started though, I just want to remind everybody that this video will be split up into easy to scrub through timestamps, so that way you can easily switch between different topics if you're coming back to this video after watching it and you need some review on the topics we discussed in this video. Anyways, let's get started. The first thing that you need to keep in mind when starting with music production is that there are 3 tools that are required in order to get started. There are a bunch of other tools that we're going to be covering later in this lecture that can help speed up the process or allow you to do different things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do without them, but these are the 3 that you need to get started. The first thing is a decent PC or laptop that'll be able to run whatever programs you decide to put on it for music production. The second is a digital audio workstation, which is the actual software where you create the music. And the third thing is a decent pair of headphones or speakers, and make sure that you get a decent pair so that way you can get the full range of sound out of your speakers or headphones. This is really important once we get into learning how to mix music and master music, basically meaning that making sure that the music fills the space and making sure that we get a full range of low to highs, and on top of that, making sure that all of the audio tracks are panned correctly and all that, and that's going to be really hard if you have speakers or headphones that aren't working properly. So make sure you have a decent pair of headphones or speakers when you're getting started. I have a tendency to suggest people to get at least 4 gigabytes of RAM, as well as a CPU that's equivalent to a Core i5 or a Core i7 by Intel. And I know those are super general guidelines, but whatever specs you get are going to be largely determined by which digital audio workstation you decide to include into your workflow. So keep that in mind as well. As an example, Famitracker, which we will be covering for chiptune production, is a tracker software. It's not as big as most digital audio workstations, meaning it has a lot less specs that are required in order to run it. Famitracker can be run on pretty much any computer for the most part. Cakewalk, on the other hand, is a much larger digital audio workstation, which I usually use for orchestral music, and so it has a lot more features and thus requires a lot higher specs. So if you take anything away from this, make sure you know that just pick PC specs that work well with the digital audio workstation you choose. What you're probably wondering is, what the heck is a digital audio workstation? Essentially, a digital audio workstation, you can think of it as a toolbox of tools that allows you to create music. Different digital audio workstations will have different tools, and there will be certain tools that every digital audio workstation will have. It really just depends on what digital audio workstation you're using and what genres it caters to best. We're going to take an example of one of the digital audio workstations we'll cover in this course, and I'm going to talk about some of the tools that it contains. So let's talk about LMMS for a little bit. The first tool we can talk about is the piano roll, which is a tool that allows you to enter in notes to a certain rhythm and allows you to play them back. It also allows you to record live, meaning that you can start a record button, and if you have an actual piano keyboard hooked up to your computer, then you can easily play notes as it's running. So the piano roll is essentially a tool that is used for entering in notes that have a pitch to rhythm. The other tool that LMMS has is instruments, and instruments are essentially these little plugins that you can put in to your digital audio workstation and allow you to change the sound of what's playing on that audio track. So you can have anywhere from like a synthesizer, a super chiptune synthesizer, to trumpets and violins, depending on what instrument you need. Just note that instruments in LMMS are digital, but you can also import audio tracks as well. And we'll go more into that once we cover the specifics of the digital audio workstation. The next thing is the beat editor, which essentially is a tool that allows you to place down beats and replay them back. It's similar to the piano roll, however it doesn't have pitch, it only has rhythm. So it simplifies it if you're making a drum beat and allows you to easily play them in a way that makes sense and play it back. So that's a useful tool as well. And the last tool we have is effects, and those are things like reverb and chorus that you can apply to instruments. A reverb, for example, is when you hear a sound and it starts bouncing off of walls, so it has this like continuous sound effect. Another effect that you can use is chorus, which is essentially this spinning sound that you can add on a note that makes it sound a lot fuller, and it just gives it like this nice tone to it that makes it seem like a lot thicker of a note than it actually is. So those are just all examples of tools that digital audio workstations contain, specifically in this case LMMS contains, but just know, if you're going to take anything away from this section, just know that a digital audio workstation is just this toolbox that you'll eventually learn all the tools for in order to create music, and you'll start learning them one by one, and your tracks will improve as you learn how to do more techniques in your digital audio workstation. A digital audio workstation gives us all of the tools that we need in order to produce our music. But what good are those tools if we don't have actual materials to construct the song with? VSTs are essentially the materials that we need in order to build our song. They're the building blocks, such as instruments and effects, that allow us to put together our songs piece by piece, writing melodies, chords, and rhythms using these building blocks. VST stands for Virtual Studio Technology, and is a form of software that allows you to take these instruments and effects and add them into your digital audio workstations. VSTs are also often referred to as plugins because they're actual pieces of software that you take and you plug into your digital audio workstation in order to use them in your projects. It's super important to note that some digital audio workstations come with a plethora of VSTs by default, and others don't. For example, LMMS has around 15 different VSTs for you to mess around with, and each of these VSTs are customizable to make hundreds of different types of instruments. On top of that, they have a tool that allows you to import your own VSTs that you find separate from LMMS. Cakewalk, on the other hand, only has around 4 or 5 built-in VSTs, meaning you need to actually find free and or paid VSTs online in order to write music in Cakewalk. The next thing to talk about is a sample library. Essentially what a sample library is it's a large folder and a large grouping of a bunch of audio samples and audio clips that you found over time that allow you to use them and splice them together in your audio tracks. They can also be used with something called a sampler, which is basically an instrument or a VST in a digital audio workstation that allows you to drop an audio sample and play that at different pitches. Essentially, you're taking a sample and making it into an instrument. This can be super helpful when you want to take super realistic sound recordings of different instruments and you want to play them to pitch, but you don't know how to play that instrument yourself. While it won't sound as realistic, there's techniques that you can use to get it to sound better. However, this method works really well when you're doing more artificial music, like electronic or chiptune style music. It can work a lot better in those. But the one thing to keep in mind is that the sample library that you have will start off small, and as we go through this course and as you learn how to produce music, it'll get larger and larger as you find new audio samples to work with. Another cool thing to know is that because sample libraries can be sourced from anywhere, you can even record your own sounds and build up your sample library that way if you'd like to as well. Just note that sample libraries are an easy way to add noise and sound to your songs without having to mess with virtual instruments to get them sound exactly right, and there are ways to add cool audio clips and vocal samples and stuff like that into your song as you work on it. Now, we've covered the 3 main tools that you absolutely need in order to get started, and some of the basic terminology for music production. I'd like to cover a couple of the tools that aren't necessarily required, but will help you process much more and help you to learn a lot quicker and do things quicker in a digital audio workstation. The first thing I'm going to cover is getting a decent microphone. Microphones are nice if you want to start recording vocal samples or try doing singing vocals, or you want to create your own audio samples. So they're super useful when you're getting started if you want to learn how to get into creating samples and stuff like that. If you want to get started and you don't have that much to spend on a mic, I'd suggest the Blue Snowball. The Blue Snowball is a decent quality mic that allows you to create some pretty good audio tracks, and it can be super duper helpful when you're getting started, and it's just a super nice tool to have laying around whenever you need to record audio. On top of microphones, another useful tool to have is Midi controllers. These are probably the one type of additional tool that I would highly suggest you getting when you get started, before you even start writing music. If you don't have a MIDI controller, it's okay, and you can write music without it. However, getting a MIDI controller will not only teach you how to start writing music and how to easily enter in notes into a digital audio workstation, but as you use it, you'll learn the beginnings of how to play piano, which is a super important skill if you want to learn music production. And I highly recommend it to anybody who really wants to get into writing music for their own games. So make sure to choose a MIDI controller that works into your budget. If you don't have that much to spend on a MIDI controller either, the thing I would suggest is getting a smaller one that only has a small range of notes. Make sure that the MIDI controller you get, though, has at least 24 notes, as that'll span 2 octaves worth of notes. And we'll discuss more of what that actually means once we get to the music theory section of this course. In this course, I'm going to be teaching you the basics of 3 different digital audio workstations, and today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of using each and what each digital audio workstation is best fit for in terms of genre, style, and your own personal workflow. Starting off with the first digital audio workstation, LMMS. LMMS stands for Linux Multimedia Studio, and is an open source digital audio workstation that was created for the intent of being used on Linux operating system. However, ever since the beginning of the development of this digital audio workstation, LMMS is now supported also on Windows and Mac, with some drawbacks. Certain external VSTs won't import properly, for example, on the Mac version, and on the Windows version, you can sometimes have a couple bugs using the repeat functions. However, there are ways to get around those bugs, and they're not too difficult. However, it is something to keep in mind. LMMS also doesn't have the best user interface when you're getting started, but once you understand the basics of it, it can be super easy and super fun to work with. One of the benefits of using LMMS as a digital audio workstation is that it comes with a ton of built-in virtual instruments and effects and samples, which makes your job really easy getting started when you're writing your music. You don't have to go looking for a bunch of samples and instruments unless there aren't any virtual instruments or samples that fit your music when you're getting started. However, LMMS also does support external virtual instruments, which makes it really easy to add extra instruments if you need more functionality and more variation in your music. The one thing I will point out as a specific feature that may be concerning to any of you writing chiptunes in LMMS is that the note slide functions are not that great when it comes to creating sliding and pitch bending melodies, but they are there. It just takes a bit more work to get good sounding note slides. Overall, I would recommend LMMS if you're planning on using electronic or chiptune style music for your games. The next digital audio workstation we're going to be covering is Famitracker, which is not your normal digital audio workstation. Famitracker is what is called a tracker software, meaning you input notes into a spreadsheet-like program, and the notes play over time until the notes are changed or closed. Imagine it like a bunch of gates where you have sound playing, and you can toggle it on and off, and you can change what that note is when it's on. The workflow of authentic tracker softwares is how chiptunes were made in the 80s and 90s, so if you're looking for that authentic chiptune sound, Famitracker is going to be your best choice for a digital audio workstation. Keep in mind, the way Famitracker works is it uses built-in synthesizer waves in order to create chiptune sounds, so it doesn't allow you to import VSTs or supports VSTs. Instead, you create instrument presets that you can apply to different synthesizer and pulse waves that allow you to change the sound of each instrument. It's very interesting and it's very good to learn if you want to learn how to properly make chiptunes. The one thing to know is that if you're going to use Famitracker, it does have limits on how many instruments you can play because it is authentic. If you're planning on creating what is called fake bit tunes, which is a chiptune set that isn't true to the original NES and original consoles, then you might want to check out LMMS because it's going to give you a lot more support over what you can use. Another program that I'm not going to be really covering that in depth in this course, but I might create one video on, is called Fami Studio. That has a much more visual format and allows you to use a little bit more instruments, and it's really good for those who don't like the non-visual style that Famitracker provides you. And that's another thing to know. If you're a very visual learner and you like tactile feeling software that allows you to create and visually see what the notes and everything looks like, Famitracker might not be the best way to start. If you're just getting started producing music in general and you want to create chiptunes, I'd suggest starting with LMMS and then make your way over to Famitracker once you understand more of the basics of how basic music theory works. Overall, if you're at that beginning level but you really want to make authentic chiptunes, or if you're at that intermediate level and you're thinking about making authentic chiptunes as well, I would highly suggest Famitracker and learning that and getting started with that as your digital audio workstation of choice. The last digital audio workstation we'll be covering in this course is Cakewalk by Bandlabs. What's amazing about Cakewalk is it used to be a paid professional digital audio workstation called Sonar Platinum. However, Cakewalk began to develop a more modern, stylistic digital audio workstation that is currently paid, and they decided to make their old digital audio workstation completely free for anybody to use. For this reason, if you're planning on creating orchestral, lo-fi, or any sort of mass-scale song that requires a lot of different types of sourced instruments and a lot of realistic audio samples, then you're really going to want to check out Cakewalk. One of the things that I really like about Cakewalk is it has really good external VST support, meaning any instruments or effects that you really like that you want to import and use in your projects, Cakewalk supports nearly everything that you can import. The other thing is because it's at that high professional UI level, it's really easy to navigate once you understand everything and understand how everything works in the software. To me, this software is very reminiscent to digital audio workstations like FL Studio and Cubase. If you're interested in trying out a free digital audio workstation that I believe is at close to a level caliber of those softwares for completely free, then I'd suggest you try out Cakewalk. All three of these digital audio workstations are great for getting started with music production for game development. I use all three of these still in my workflow every day, every time I write music. I'll use LMMS usually for electronic music or really mass-scale chiptune style music. I'll use Famitracker whenever I'm creating authentic, small-scale, NES-style chiptune music. And I'll use Cakewalk whenever I'm making most of anything else, including lo-fi tracks and orchestral tracks. And those are the four main genres that I'm going to be covering in this series, but I'm not going to be talking about the specific aspects of it. Because those are the four genres that I'm really good at producing, I'm just going to teach the basics of music theory through those genres and give you little bits and tips. However, if you're interested in other genres of music that are super prevalent in video games and you want me to analyze those in some theory videos, let me know in the comments below and I'll see if I can include them in the curriculum of this course. Now, before we end this video, I quickly want to let you all know where you can download these three digital audio workstations and teach you how to install them. So let's get started with teaching you how to install LMMS. All three of these digital audio workstations are super easy to download, and I will now be taking you through the process of downloading each. Starting with LMMS, LMMS has a super easy download process. All you have to do is go on its homepage and click right here on the download link that's right at the top of the homepage. You will then be sent to this page here, where you have all the different installation options for LMMS. Make sure to choose which operating system your computer is running, and then choose under stable versions the version of your computer that you have. For example, I have a Windows 64-bit system, so I'm going to make sure I want to download the Windows 64 version of LMMS. This will download an LMMS installer, which takes you through the steps of installing the software. If you're curious as to what these nightly versions are, it's the currently developed branch of LMMS. So if you want to try out any of the new features that they're currently working on that aren't super stable, but just to see what you can write with them, those are always here for you to download. Once the launcher finishes downloading, you click it to open it, and it will take you through the steps of actually installing the software. All you have to do is click through, make sure to accept the agreement, make sure to put LMMS in the right folder that you want to, and then make sure to install the program. And once you're finishing installing it, you're going to want to go to that area in your files on your computer and open up LMMS through that. Also, if you have a Windows computer, for example, you should be able to go to the search bar in the bottom left and type in LMMS, and it should give you the area where you can start up the software. And after it's done getting started, you'll be presented with the digital audio workstation. And that's all you need to do to get set up with LMMS. The next digital audio workstation I'll be showing you guys how to download is Famitracker, the tracker software. If you click this will not take you to a download page, but rather will directly download the software for you. You will then get this zip folder here. You want to make sure that you go into your downloads folder and you want to unzip this zip folder and have all the contents inside it by extracting all right here. After you've extracted the folder, you should have these files in here. The README file will tell you all of the info about Famitracker that you need to know in order to get started. And the exe will actually launch the digital audio workstation itself. The CHM just has the help file for anything that you're confused on. You just click open here and it will tell you about the interface and the configuration and all that stuff, which is kind of nice. And then you'll have demo songs, and these are super nice when you're getting started. If you want to analyze how chiptunes are made and how they sound in Famitracker, you get a bunch of different sample songs for you to mess around with and test on the software. To open Famitracker, click the famitracker.exe, and that should take you to the digital audio workstation straight in. Cakewalk is just as easy to install as the other digital audio workstations. However, as I didn't bring up earlier in this lecture, keep in mind that Cakewalk is a digital audio workstation that only works on Windows systems. If you have a Linux or a Mac system, I would suggest that if you want to write lo-fi or orchestral or more complex music, use LMMS because it will suit your needs for when you're getting started. For the installation of Cakewalk, click the download button here, and this is going to download you the Bandlabs Assistant, which is what will actually allow you to install Cakewalk as well as their other softwares. However, we just want Cakewalk, so you're going to download the Bandlabs Assistant, and then once you finish, you want to make sure you sign up for an account through the Bandlabs Assistant. And then once you finish that, then you can install Cakewalk right there on the Assistant. I'll take you through the first couple of steps when doing this, just so you have a visual video representation of how to install it, so it's a lot easier for you. Once it's finished installing, click the Bandlabs Assistant icon in the bottom left, and it will make sure to get set up for you. This will bring up the launcher here. However, for you, it should have a sign up icon. You want to make sure you sign up, and then you should be taken to this assistant right here. All you have to do is go under apps, and under Cakewalk, it'll have an install button. For me, it's update because I have to update the software, but for you, it should show install. And that's all you have to do to start Cakewalk. After you actually install the software, you should be able to either launch it right here, or you should have an icon on your desktop if you just selected that as an option, or you should be able to easily look up Cakewalk just as you looked up LMMS and Famitracker after installing those. And by clicking this will launch Cakewalk and get you started in learning how to write music with Cakewalk. And that's all you need to know to install those 3 digital audio workstations. And that wraps up the first lecture in this Introduction to Music Production for Game Developers course. Now, before we wrap up the first lesson in this course, I want to let you all know that every one of these lessons will have an assignment at the end of it. And while these assignments aren't required, I highly suggest you taking a look at them and attempting them because they'll help you to become a better music producer. For this week, I would suggest you download and install all 3 of these digital audio workstations and try your best to navigate around and see what you can figure out for yourself. If you have any questions at all, you can join our Discord community and someone else in the community or I can help you out and answer any of your questions. Also, if you have any questions, you can always leave them below in the comments of these videos. However, the Discord community is the easiest way to interact with all the other students in the course, as well as me if you have any questions. In the next lesson, I'll be formally teaching you the basics of each of the 3 digital audio workstations and how to actually get to playing notes and messing around with the actual sound inside these programs. If you're interested in anything that I do outside of this course, you can follow my Twitter, which will be in the link below, and you can always join the Discord community to get updates on anything else I'm working on besides music in this course. Anyways, I want to thank you for joining this course, and I hope you're as excited as I am for you to learn how to create music for your own games. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.